Housekeeper, I've invited some celeb friends over, so make sure to entertain them.
Boomed Catherine, acting all high and mighty. With a haughty expression, she looked down on me. Neither this luxurious condo we're in, nor the fancy tea set she boasts about are actually hers. James, gentle-natured, who seems a bit naive, doesn't appear to realize her malicious intent. Exhausted from being at her beck and call, I have no choice but to obey helplessly.
Why is she here?
Huh?
As I carried the tea and snacks over, the moment Catherine's celeb friends saw me, they started trembling. Ignoring the confused Catherine, we all got excited. Amid the tumultuous scene caused by my unexpected identity, the fate of Catherine took a drastic turn as James began to speak nonchalantly. And the person who delivered the final blow to Catherine was someone unexpected. It was surprising that such finale was awaiting. Even if I could turn back time and relive this day, I don't think I could have known what was to happen. I'm Michelle Wilson, age 45. I've been married to my husband James, who is the same age as me, for 19 years. We've just moved into what you might call a high-rise condo. We finished unpacking everything, and we're enjoying our new life. After our child left home for college, it seemed like the perfect time for James and I to move to a condo that was just the right size for the two of us. It's a nice high-rise, quiet, and with good sunlight, providing a comfortable environment, and it was completely worth it. We bought smaller furniture than in our old house, and the stylish tableware I had always wanted. I'm happy to see the space gradually shaping up to my taste. But this new, wonderful life was to be destroyed by a single phone call.
Hello, Michelle. Congrats on the move to the high rise. I want to celebrate, so I'm coming over now.
Catherine, who lives with James' sister and her husband, had caught wind of our move and decided to come over. I managed to reply cheerily, but inside I was screaming. This Catherine, I find her a bit challenging. It's more of a personality issue than the fact that she's my mother-in-law. Catherine likes to boast as if everything was her achievement. I really don't like that. She incessantly seeks to dominate the conversation and talks down on people.
It's nice that mom can do something good once in a while.
James said, never suspecting the real intentions behind her visit. I sighed. It's just for a short time, I thought. I just need to get through this without any issues. Hoping my uneasy feelings would prove to be groundless, I waited for Catherine's arrival.
Wow, what a beautiful house.
Catherine arrived, frolicking like a child. This place has an entrance where visitors ring the doorbell through an intercom, and the entrance door can be unlocked remotely. I was surprised by how close she came to the intercom camera, but I wasn't displeased by her cheerful demeanor. I thought maybe this time we might end on good terms when suddenly Catherine said something.
Let's have dinner delivered or go out. I'm craving steak.
It's currently 10 a.m. It's too early to be discussing dinner plans. It seems Catherine intends to stay at least until dinner. The thought that she might even be planning to stay overnight made my cheeks twitch.
I didn't hear anything about her staying over, so I guess she's leaving? Well, it if so happens that she decides to stay over. She can sleep on the mattresses we keep for when the kids visit.
James is sweet and naive, but fatally insensitive to malice. Even when he's the target of a prank, he doesn't realize it and keeps smiling. I'm the type to worry about things, so his carefree attitude both surprises and attracts me. But in these occasions, his naivete could be quite frustrating. Even if Catherine acts high and mighty again, James probably won't even notice. And the person in question is Catherine. To James, She's his mother, whom he grew up with and is very familiar with. It seems best to assume that he won't lend a hand unless I explicitly say I'm uncomfortable. Catherine came dragging her suitcase along. The gift she handed over was a pack of sweets worth about $10. I promptly made tea and opened the box, only to see Catherine start munching on the sweets before us.
Wow, impressive. Really. James did well buying such a place. Makes me proud too.
She exclaimed, chin up and nostrils flared. A perfect smug look. If this were an audition for a wicked role like Cinderella's stepmother, she'd land the role on the spot.
We didn't buy it, and we got it thanks to Michelle.
James replied, tilting his head. That's right, after all, this high-rise is only rented.
Oh, James, you're too nice, aren't you? Now, Michelle, hurry up and take out the trash.
Catherine quickly shifted from praising James to giving me a stern look. She seemed to be telling me to throw away the wrappers from the sweets she'd finished, just left carelessly on the table. Annoyed, I gathered and threw away the trash. The trash can was in plain sight. She could have done it herself. Or at least, she could have simply said, "Please throw it away." Being commanded felt demeaning. After that, Catherine kept barking orders at me every chance she got. Fetch this, clean that up, treating me like some kind of servant. Initially, I went along with it, serving meals as told, but Catherine started getting cocky.
This stir fry is all greasy. Don't you clean? I've been here since morning and haven't seen you clean once. You're like the housekeeper of this place. Work harder.
Normally, I don't mind cleaning, in fact. I rather enjoy housework. I've been avoiding it precisely because Catherine was here as a guest. It seems she really did think of me as a housekeeper. I almost talked back, but held it in. She was supposed to leave soon anyway. It would be wiser to let it pass rather than stir things up. What's cunning about Catherine is that she hardly ever says such things in front of James. When he's around, she sweet talks and praises him, making sure they have a great time. It's utterly spiteful and annoying. However, after dinner, things took a turn for the worse. Catherine declared she was staying overnight. James momentarily grimaced, then whispered to me with a wry smile.
Sorry, Michelle. I'll talk to her properly later. But could you just bear with it tonight?
I can never say anything to that frowning face of his. Reluctantly agreeing, I quietly began preparing the sleeping arrangements. While I was spreading sheets on the bed, Catherine suddenly appeared nearby.
Cotton sheets? Don't you have silk? The stores are still open. Go buy some.
She commanded in a snide tone, totally different from when she's in front of James. Extremely unpleasant, but I still responded in as kind a voice as I could manage. Please bear with it just for today. Our home only has cotton. I even tried adding a smile, but it didn't seem to open any doors in Catherine's heart. She glared at me bitterly. As I was thinking how some cotton sheets could really bother someone that much, Catherine snorted and said,
Planning to kick me out in a day? I plan to stay for a few days, and I want to meet the celeb neighbors too.
I was taken aback. Keeping my strained smile, I hurried back to James. Hey, Catherine says she's staying for a few days. Can you ask her to either go out while I work or ask her to keep it down? James looked at me, a bit surprised too. Actually, I write a blog as a hobby and also do a bit of work from home. It was clear that with Catherine around, that was going to be hindered, and I really wanted to secure some time for myself. James nodded firmly and spoke to Catherine.
If you're staying, please don't disturb Michelle's work. It's important. Why don't you go shopping or take a walk during the day?
Then Catherine cheerfully responded, "Yes, yes." But her overly excited demeanor made me suspicious. All I could do was pray she wouldn't cause any trouble. However, the following days showed Catherine's complete lack of consideration. Take the laundry, for example. She would leave it out every night and get angry if it wasn't washed by the next morning. I felt sad, wondering why I was doing her laundry, trying to avoid disturbing the neighbors with noise.
Make sure to wash it in a laundry bag. It's delicate clothing.
Catherine demanded sharply. Reluctantly, I kept stuffing items into the bag, but I saw nothing that really needed delicate handling. Her promise not to disturb me during the day was forgotten. Instead of going out, she ordered me to go shopping for her.
I told you to buy juice, and you bring back this sugary water. Who buys anything but 100% fruit juice when their in-laws are visiting?
With that, she knocked the drink off the table. The sound of the liquid splashing inside the bottle followed. All that effort I made to rush and buy it, and for what? Catherine piled on more pressure.
Hurry up and go buy the right one. You're really slow. Isn't a daughter-in-law just like a housekeeper? Don't you get it yet? I'll kick you out of this house.
I silently booted up my computer. I thought I couldn't deal with this anymore. "I'm sorry, but I have work that needs to get done. The convenience store is right in front of us, so please go buy whatever you like." Catherine left the house, hurling unbearable insults as she went. Finally alone, I began to calm down in the quiet space. Catherine would probably be here for just a few more days. Just endure it, I told myself. When Catherine returned, she was holding not juice, but a bottle of wine. I was startled for a moment, but alcohol was excusable. "Catherine, if you're going to have wine, please enjoy this too." James bought some really tasty cheese on a business trip. Offering her some rather expensive cheese seemed to improve her mood visibly. Catherine showed no signs of leaving even after a week. Moreover, she began greeting the neighbors on her own. Apparently, she loitered around the elevator and started conversations with anyone she could find. I felt mortified when James reported this.
I told her to stop waiting around for people. She's all eager about making connections with the celebs. Maybe it's time for a tough approach.
Both James's patience and mine were running thin. On the ninth day of her stay, Catherine suddenly brought guests home. It seemed she had her eyes set on a certain family that was particularly affluent and refined among the residents, especially friendly with the wife, even linking arms with her. I learned the wife's name was Melissa from Catherine calling out to her, but I didn't know these people. I was in my house clothes, so I hurried to the kitchen to escape, leaving James to handle the guests.
Mom's acting like she's friends with Melissa's, bragging as if she rented this high-rise herself. She really needs to stop.
James reported to me in the kitchen, shrugging. Moreover, Catherine has even declared she's throwing a party. I was thoroughly dismayed. Just then, Catherine's voice rang out.
Housekeeper, I've invited some celeb friends, so entertain them, will you?
I was just tired. Without the energy to resist, I began preparing the tea. James quietly brought me a change of clothes. Changing into these would at least save me the embarrassment of being seen in my house clothes. I placed a tea set and some stored baked goods on a tray and walked in front of the guests.
Why is this person here?
Huh?
As soon as I brought in the tea and snacks, Melissa started trembling. Behind her, her husband and daughter also showed signs of excitement, shaking their hands. Catherine was visibly shocked as her proud celeb friend suddenly changed color.
Wow, the real deal. You are Cherry, right? I always read your blog. I'm a fan. I watch your streams too.
Melissa stood up and reached out for a handshake. The name she mentioned was my online username. Blogging and streaming are my hobbies and also what I do for work. Melissa's family were my readers. Since I showed my face online, they recognized me immediately. Catherine, who doesn't follow blogs or videos, was clueless about the handle. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoy reading it. Suddenly, I felt much better and smiled broadly. Actually, my blog is quite popular, especially among housewives. Sometimes people approach me in stores, but I had no idea I had readers in the same condo.
Wow, the real deal. So classy.
Leaving a stunned Catherine behind, Melissa was overjoyed. I calmly tried to settle her down. Seeing how happy it made them, I poured the tea with all my heart, hoping they'd enjoy a proper cup. I also served not just baked sweets, but dried fruits and some special gourmet jelly. I even added the delicious canellas that Melissa had brought to the dessert-laden table. Thanks to the lovely assortment of sweets, the atmosphere brightened instantly. While Catherine looked baffled, we were having a great time. Catherine, unfamiliar with the internet, was left out. Seeing the changed atmosphere, James joined in with a smile.
I saw the notice that you couldn't stream this week because of overnight guests, and I was really sad. Wait, Catherine's the guest? Oh, why is that? Adults should be able to stay quiet during a stream. I thought maybe a little child was visiting.
As Melissa spoke, Melissa's family chuckled. Catherine, noticing the disapproving looks around her, blushed and looked down. Actually, I'm also known as a charismatic housewife blogger. I post tips on housekeeping and organizing, and my content is viewed across multiple generations. I had started streaming recently due to requests from readers, allowing direct interactions. But Catherine had repeatedly interrupted, preventing the planned streams. Catherine really isn't familiar with the internet, and the likelihood of her finding my social media is almost zero. I had overnight guests and couldn't do the planned streams. To those that were waiting, I'm really sorry. After all, if I don't take care of the guests, they get mad. This is how I wrote in a very vague way. Of course, I didn't explicitly mention Catherine, and I made it somewhat jokingly so she wouldn't look like a complete villain. But anyone seeing this situation in my social media would understand how Melissa might see things. Next, it was James who spoke.
Wow, you read Michelle's blog too? Thank you. She's publishing a book soon with the publishing house I work for. So please look forward to it.
Catherine looked startled as she gazed at James. It was clear she hadn't heard anything about this. I hadn't mentioned this matter to Catherine either. Catherine has always gotten upset when I share something good happening to me, accusing me of bragging. That's why I didn't mention it this time either. It's one thing if she comes across it by chance, but I see no need to tell her and make her dislike me on purpose.
So, well, she's currently working on publishing the book. I even told Mom not to disturb Michelle's work. You can't interrupt the streaming, okay? If Michelle's book gets delayed, I'll get in trouble too since I'm managing it.
Catherine let out a small huh and shrank a little. She probably never imagined I was working together with James. Then, without any malice, James started mentioning Catherine's actions.
By the way, Mom, I remember you said something funny. Why not include that as a family episode in the book? Remember last night when Michelle made hashed beef rice and you said, "This curry is sour. It must be spoiled." You're such a natural, aren't you?
Melissa's family burst out laughing. I just looked down and held my laugh. It felt wrong to laugh, But James didn't stop.
Remember how you said living in the high rise makes you a celeb too, even though you were simply staying over? You were drinking wine and talking about indulging because you're a celeb. But feeling luxurious with convenience store wine is something a commoner would do. I almost pointed that out.
I thought about saying it was a charming episode, but seeing Catherine's face turning from red to almost black, I decided not to. The episode might have been too trivial for Melissa's family, as they didn't find it particularly amusing. Melissa and her family just gave ambiguous smiles and compared James and Catherine. Let's change the topic. By the way, Melissa, I see you're using that tote bag. I tried to change the subject by speaking to Melissa. I made that comment because the tote bag she used to carry the Canelles was the tote bag I had made through a collaboration with the magazine. As the topic shifted, Melissa's face brightened up.
Yes, I love the bag designed by Cherry. The inner pockets are just the right size, and it's durable with a wide base. It's wonderful. Actually, I have two more at home.
Catherine didn't say another word. She was clearly not pleased, but she didn't want to be disliked by the affluent family she had set her eyes on. She was incredibly quiet, which was truly a relief. The rest of the tea party was very pleasant. We had just moved here and didn't know much about the area. Mrs. family, having lived here longer, knew a lot about nice shops and tourist spots. They shared many useful tips, making it a valuable time.
I have other friends who read Cherry's blog too. Would you like to join us for lunch sometime?
Melissa extended a delightful invitation. It seemed like a promising start to a good neighborhood relationship. Catherine glared at me with a fierce expression and gritted her teeth. She was probably upset that her favorite celeb friend was taken by me.
People with money? No thanks. They're greedy and nasty. It's always those people that have bad family history.
Catherine suddenly started ranting nonsensically. Accusing without any basis and getting irrationally angry was just shameful. The lunch invitation was for me, not Catherine, so it was none of her concern. Moreover, how could she insult guests she brought herself with a smile? What kind of nerve does one have to do that? She might have felt left out, but much of it was her own doing. I hadn't informed her of my circumstances because of her habitual sour reactions, and her ignorance of the internet was the result of her stubborn refusal to learn, despite invitations from her husband and grandchildren. Furthermore, Catherine wasn't the kind of celeb she claimed to be, so she should quit acting and talking like one. Please don't mind her. The stark contrast between Catherine's behavior and mine only highlighted her oddities even more. Then James chimed in. His tone was as laid back as ever, softening the statement.
I've never cared about family backgrounds, though. But I do know about Michelle's family. Your ancestors were on that historical drama recently, right?
Yes, our era does come up often in those shows. I responded nonchalantly. Catherine froze, and Melissa's family started murmuring. This was something I had only shared with James and close friends, but indeed my ancestors were notable figures familiar to anyone who studied history. Although there was a time when we became quite poor, and now we're just ordinary citizens. When James mentioned my ancestors' names, Melissa's family all nodded, as if they recognized them. Catherine, who never really studied history properly, didn't catch on even when she heard the names. Suddenly, as I was being fawned over, Catherine turned bright red again, shaking. But this time it seemed out of anger, not embarrassment. About an hour later, Melissa's family left. As they were leaving, Melissa expressed her sympathy.
It must be hard, but your husband is just as kind and sweet as you wrote in your blog. Please don't let your mother-in-law bring you down.
I simply responded, "Thank you very much," and smiled as I saw them off. As soon as the door closed, Catherine's frustration exploded.
I wish they wouldn't praise Michelle so much. Living in a nice house is all thanks to James's earnings. The one who earns more is always more impressive. You're being supported, so you should be humble. James, stop grinning and educate your rude wife.
Her face, twisted in frustration, seemed to age her by about 5 years. Her shouting voice was quite nasty. I worried it might carry beyond the door. Then James turned to Catherine with a seriousness I had never seen before. I realized, for the first time, Catherine was revealing her true self in front of her son. Surely James would stand up for me now, I thought, looking at him expectantly.
No, Mom. We live here thanks to Michelle. Didn't you hear when I said that before? Michelle pays all the rent here. Sure, I handle the living expenses. Honestly, these days Michelle earns quite a bit more than I do.
I write a column for a magazine, and thankfully, I have some income. My collaboration products and streaming are also doing well, delivering significant results. Being freelance is unstable, so it's not always more, but lately, it's a fact that I slightly out-earn James. His voice and expression were unusually cold as he spoke these ordinary facts. Inwardly cheering that James firmly stood by me, I added my own words. "I'm sorry I didn't talk about it. I wasn't sure how to bring up the topic of my income. More importantly, such behavior in front of our invited guests is inappropriate. It's disappointing." It seemed no longer necessary to force a smile. Catherine, in her confusion, darted her eyes wildly, looking up, looking down, looking at me, and finally glaring at her son. She raised her voice.
Are you saying you're losing to this woman? How much are you earning? What about your father's inheritance? If we include that, surely you.
Then, James abruptly interrupted with his comment. The information he continued with was new to me as well, and it quite startled me.
Dad's inheritance. What are you talking about, Mom? You got half of what was there, and there's hardly anything left now. Maybe about $20?
James chuckled, but both Catherine and I gaped. I didn't know the amount of the inheritance from my father-in-law. I knew it was handed over, but since it was solely James's asset, I thought it inappropriate for me to comment. So I had no idea how much was actually spent when I heard it was all used up. When I glanced at Catherine, her expression had turned shockingly pale. I guessed it must have been a substantial amount.
Remember when I paid a couple times? When you came to me saying you need help paying for the debt you made at the club? I used the inheritance money for paying all that. I used it because I couldn't bear to spend our important family savings on such things.
I couldn't help but let out a gasp of astonishment. I couldn't imagine Catherine squandering a large sum on such frivolities. Whether he knew how shaken I was or not, James continued nonchalantly.
Yep, the inheritance is gone, so I can't pay next time. You'll have to manage on your own.
Catherine gasped. Just from that, I could tell she was still up to the same old tricks. Catherine is approaching her late 60s, but saying "you are still so energetic" might be too sarcastic.
What? What am I supposed to do now? I don't have anything left. Michelle, you say something.
I just silently shook my head. Catherine, disappointed, left our house. After Catherine left, I caught James and pleaded with him to keep her from coming over for a while. I thought he might be reluctant because she is his mother after all, but he understood immediately and called Catherine.
Mom, what you did this time, calling Michelle a maid and all, was too much. So, to get to the point, you're banned from our house, or rather, this condo. Did you see how the neighbors were looking at us? Please don't embarrass us to the point we can't live in our new home.
I almost blurted out that I hadn't asked for her to be banned outright. But then I thought about how much easier life would be without such episodes and kept quiet. I was honestly happy that James had spoken up so clearly. Encouraged by James, I called the most reliable ally I could think of. The person on the other end was James's real sister, Sarah, who is my sister-in-law. Sarah and I are very close. I had informed her right away when I found out Catherine was coming over. Sarah and her husband are currently living with Catherine. After James's father passed away, Catherine, who became lonely, half invited herself to live with them. Sarah and her husband live in a house and had spare rooms after their children moved out. Thus, they allowed Catherine to stay.
Let me know right away if Mom gets up to anything.
And actually, Sarah had already told me about it. Apparently, Catherine had caused issues at Sarah's before. She went around bragging about the house as if it were her own, infuriating her own daughter.
Don't go around saying our house, which we worked hard for and are still paying a mortgage on, is yours. The neighbors say, must be nice to have parents who build you a house. Think about us who are still paying the mortgage.
Sarah had scolded her. It seems Sarah, despite Catherine being her mother, doesn't like Catherine much. From when her children were small, Catherine had fabricated stories about her difficult children to garner sympathy for her parenting. These unnecessary embarrassments weren't just once or twice, but had caused years of frustration. Sarah and her husband are still paying off a 20-year mortgage on their house. It's no wonder they'd be upset about having their hard-earned results bragged about as if they were not their own.
If she causes any more trouble, we cannot possibly live together anymore. I told her she'd have to live on her pension alone. Thanks for letting me know. If she's coming back tonight, I won't be able to sleep. I'll sort this out.
As declared, Catherine came crying the next day after being kicked out. She still had her suitcase from yesterday, wearing the same clothes as when she left. Right after she returned home, she was scolded by Sarah and her husband and had to come back just as she was. Catherine looked so worn out on the intercom screen that I wondered if we should let her stay for at least a day. I turned to James, half expecting to let her in. But my dear oblivious James just smiled and responded,
No way, Mom. Remember, you're banned. Kicked out by sis? Oh, come on. You can't fool us with that. You just want to come in, right? No way. Please leave.
Catherine tried to protest, but James quickly ended the call on the intercom. I was taken aback. For once, I was grateful for the situation, but I marveled at how he had survived this long being this oblivious to things. I'd been too busy with parenting to notice just how extreme his naivete was. Or perhaps he had to become naive to survive in such a family. It's a shame it hadn't improved over the years we spent together. But now that our children had moved out, it was just the two of us for the first time in 19 years. This time, I'm determined to retrain James. Since that day, half a year has passed. I live happily every day. It seems Melissa let something slip because more neighbors have started talking to me. Some have seen my blog and streams, and while it's a bit embarrassing, it's fun to have more friends. Our home has also settled down nicely. If I think of him as a big, charming son, James really fills the role of a comforting presence. I still miss our children sometimes, but this time alone as a couple isn't bad either. Catherine has since started living alone in a small apartment. If she hadn't always caused such trouble, she might have had a retirement surrounded by children and grandchildren, but now she leads a lonely life. With a modest living, she likely can't afford her favorite clubs anymore. Without help from her son or daughter, the clubs probably won't entertain her anymore either. One of the blessings I'm thankful for is having plenty of time for hobbies and work. I've turned down offers before due to lack of time, but now I might publish a book through an invitation from a publishing house. I can try new things now that all the complications have been resolved. However, I recently had a suspicion. Perhaps James isn't naturally naive, but has been playing the part of a strategist. When I asked Sarah about Catherine, who was supposed to be somewhere else, I heard that James had arranged Catherine's living situation for her solo life. He didn't provide financial help, but did assist with finding her a place to live. Moreover, the condition was from now on no contact with Catherine unless it's for hospitalization or a family funeral. I was surprised to hear that he had done such a thing. As I was puzzled by when he had managed all this, Sarah continued.
James is really cunning. He might look like innocent white bread, but if you split him open, he's a pitch black chocolate bread.
The metaphor was so unique I almost missed it, but it sounded rather ominous. Apparently, James was quite upset when Catherine once ran up a debt at a club and immediately consulted a lawyer and the police. Officially, he said it was to ensure the family wouldn't be harassed for debts, but the reality was different.
He actually wanted to shut down the club. He investigated and reported them for serving alcohol to minors, among other things. He figured if the club knew they had such a troublesome relative, they wouldn't let Catherine run up a tab, aiming to cut her off.
I've never seen or heard of such a calculating side of James. Could it really be that he's not actually naive but pretends to be, all upon cunning calculations? 19 years, 19 years. The thought is somewhat frightening.
I don't think it's quite an act. He said he likes how you take charge, Michelle. Maybe he's just playing up to that.
Unexpectedly, I was showered with insights about James's affections. With this revelation, even his sleepy bear-like adorable gestures seemed to be his way of showing affection. Well, if he does it unconsciously, it might as well be considered love rather than an act. Whatever the case, I no longer have to worry about anything and look forward to living with just James. I'm excited about a future where I can live more true to myself.